Jackie Chan.
Hold it!
Dynamic. Dauntless. Resourceful. A ladies' man. He's no average cop, but he gets the job done. At first, he was hailed as a hero.
Lock him in the cells. Yes, sir. Book him. For murder.
Until he got set up.
Get in!
Now his whole police precinct is after him. To clear his name, his only chance is to get the crooks who framed him. Jackie Chan is a one-man battalion. As he sets his record straight in Police Story.
All right, hello and welcome to another drive-in double feature. I'm Ryan.
I'm Nathan.
And today we're going to be talking about 1985's Police Story, directed by the star of the movie, Jackie Chan.
The legend.
Now, the legend himself, one of my personal favorite stars of all time, and this is a perfect episode for me to totally geek out. Nathan, what has been your experience? I know you haven't seen the movie beforehand, but what's been your experience with Jackie Chan?
I'll be very honest with you. Out of all the genres that I'm into, Kung Fu and martial arts movies, I know zero about. But I mean, like, it's not that I'm like against them or anything. It's just a genre I never really got into. I've only seen like maybe 2 Jackie Chan movies in my life.
You had to have seen Rush Hour or Shanghai Noon or something like that.
Which you're right. I forgot Shanghai Noon existed. I've seen Shanghai Noon. I've seen the first Rush Hour. I saw the, I'm forgetting the movie now, the one that just, The Foreigner. But none of like his like from China. So this is my introduction to that, really.
And I would even say like Rush Hour is kind of like starting his downward slope in terms of like what he's able to do, not so much his quality, but just what his body is just physically capable of doing anymore. But 70s and 80s and early 90s are prime Jackie Chan time. I guess to go in my experience, how I first discovered Jackie Chan, I was in a hotel room of all places, and it was during one of those time periods where you could buy the movies off the TV. It was the year 1996. I don't know why, but there's a movie called Jackie's First Strike that was like, okay. Because I think it was at the time where I'd seen all the other like kid movies or like movies that I was interested in, and that was about the only thing. And my parents had like gone downstairs or something, and I was in the hotel room, so they let me get one movie, and that was the one movie I got. And fun fact, Jackie Chan's First Strike is actually the 4th Police Story movie, but they retitled it and for the American release. But seeing that movie for the first time, I just had never seen anything like it. I mean, it's this guy, he's leaping off of buildings, he's you using weird objects to fight other enemies. He's using ladders. He's using chairs. It's so fast paced that my mind couldn't comprehend it at the time. And I immediately fell in love. And I pretty much afterwards, I would go to any Jackie Chan movie I could. Like I saw Mr. Nice Guy, The Tuxedo, Rush Hour, Shanghai Noon, all of those movies. So any movie that was in theaters with Jackie Chan, I pretty much saw afterwards. But I did not discover Police Story until much later because one thing about Jackie Chan is that his movies are not really super easy to obtain. And if they are, they're cut to death or they've been horribly dubbed. And I really love watching the original audio and what it's actually supposed to sound like from the original actors. So,
and from clips I've seen, a lot of the older stuff is really low quality. Like it hasn't been cleaned up properly for release or anything.
Yeah, and I don't know why that is. I'm guessing a bunch of different production companies own his movies. So luckily, the Criterion, they were able to come out with the box set of the first and second Police Story movies. And my fingers crossed in the future, they'll do like a nice box set of all of his other movies. Because there is a lot of gold in there that has not been released, even on Blu-ray. Even like some of his best movies, Project A, has only been on DVD, never on Blu-ray.
Crazy. Yeah, no, I'd love that. I hope like somebody whoever whatever team was like, let's do Police Story. And let me tell you, that set's really nice. That's like some of my favorite Criterion artwork. Whoever did the art for that release, it's really nice for Police Story 1 and 2. So I hope like that those movies do get their due. And that's what's nice about Criterion, right? This isn't a Criterion podcast or anything, but they released Bruce Lee movies as well recently. They're giving a little more into like those kind of obscure movies rather than maybe your avant-garde weird.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, this isn't about the Criterion so far, but that's one thing I do love about them is that they do take these genres that they don't discriminate against any one genre. Pretty much almost everything is represented in the collection, I would say. Yeah,
I would say so, except for maybe animation.
There is some glaring holes, but yeah, they're working on it. They have like 3.
Yeah, they got to work on it. There's so many movies out there, and like those they take forever. So, but there's some that you really hope get released. Maybe a Bakshi box set.
Oh, hey, that's an idea.
Yeah, I'll send it right to him.
I cannot wait for Coonskin to go right on the Criterion collection.
Yeah, I even forget the name of the movie. Hey, Good Looking. That desperately needs a release, right?
Oh yeah, everyone needs to see that. Not really, but anyway.
Yeah. Anyway,
let's get right into it. So this movie just to kind of give you a backstory, like Kung Fu theater, martial arts cinema beforehand was very kind of operatic. So like when I say that is that when they have a lot of these fight scenes, it would be set during like olden Chinese times and they'd be fighting in super exaggerated manners that to the point where it looks like they're doing like a circus performance versus what actual martial artists were doing. So Jackie Chan, once he became a lot more famous, he started implementing his own style and using his own stunt teams, which he uses almost every one of his movies. And it makes it look like a much more smoother. And it actually looks like an actual fight is happening between martial artists. And Police Story is one of the first modern day martial arts movie where it's not set in like the past time or like during ancient times. It's one of the very first modern day. It's set in an urban setting. It's a lot of fun, and it's basically just Jackie Chan as a policeman trying to take down a drug lord. That's the bare bones plot of it.
It's a simple plot, but I think that benefits the movie quite highly because at the end of the day, what I got out of it was that I was there to watch fights, some really great stunts, some great set pieces. And that was the bulk of the movie. And I think what you got out of that, it really delivered, like highly.
Yeah. And that's one thing I do want to say. And if you do want to give one gripe to his movies, it's that you're not going to see these big complex plot points. You're not going to see Oscar winning acting or anything like that. But you are going to see action that you're probably never going to see, and it's going to impress the hell out of you. And these people are quite literally giving their bodies to this art, where their bodies are being destroyed doing these scenes.
Yeah, Jackie Chan was hurt while making this movie multiple times. It's hardcore, right? It's cool because Jackie Chan is one of those famous actors for being I will do all my own stunts. That's his whole deal. And you get to see that here. And just knowing that it's not a stunt person, the camera can sit. The camera isn't cutting quick to hide body doubles. You actually get to see all this in motion. And it's really just incredible to see like almost the choreography that goes into all the movements and the punches.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can kind of take away a lot from this movie and how you can really compare this movie and contrast it with a lot of modern day American cinema with their fight scenes. Because I cannot tell you how frustrating it is seeing a fight scene in an American movie and the camera is just, it's shaking so much, or there's these super fast cuts where it's like they almost do like 20 cuts just to show like a punch and a kick. And it becomes so distracting. You don't know what the hell's happening, but it's one of my biggest pet peeves.
No, totally agree. That's why it was so nice watching this movie. We actually got to watch this one together, and I remember pointing out like, oh, it's nice to know like what's going on, you know, because there's no shaky cam, there's none of that garbage. It's very plain, and you get to really revel in like the actual stunts. You actually get to be like, oh, those stunts were awesome, rather than have it masked and blurred over effects and stuff. And the thing is, it's not even fighting stunts. There's more to it. They're really dynamic. I just think about, like, I remember when we were watching this in the beginning, there's like a whole like shanty town almost that gets wrecked and destroyed by vehicles as the cars drive through the houses downhill, and there's just buildings are blowing out, stuff is falling down, and it's insane looking. It's like, oh my God, like this felt really expensive. And I guess it wasn't that expensive of a movie. You know better than me.
Well, they built that town specifically for that scene. That
just
was
to
just
get wrecked.
they found a random hillside and they built a small city in there, and that's the first scene of the movie. That's that's where we establish who our main protagonist is and who our main antagonist is. And it's quite literally an explosive scenes where cars are exploding, buildings are exploding, cars are being flipped. Right away, it kind of sets the tone of there's going to be a lot of scenes like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it lasts for a good while because this scene goes right into the next one, and this is when I feel like you get to really see Jackie Chan showing his power as like a stunt man, as a martial artist, is the double-decker bus scene where he's riding on in an umbrella, dodging hits, and he's riding around on the side of the car having to dodge cars and stuff. I guess it did want me to, I brought up, and you'll have to tell me if other Jackie Chan movies from this era do this, but it like kind of like there's comedy mixed with the fighting. It's not straight fighting. There's a lot of humor tied into it as well, because it's almost comical when he had to pull up his legs to run on top of cars as he's hanging off the bus.
Yeah, that is no stranger to any movie of his that he does. Almost any. There's very few serious Jackie Chan martial arts movies, I will say. It's pretty much a trademark of his where you're going to see some type of comedic type of acting, because Jackie Chan, one of his biggest inspirations were Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, where they're kind of doing these action sequence, but there's a hint of comedy in it, and he loves like doing these really big exaggerated faces. He loves these like accidental kind of hits. But one thing of his movies I think really does make it so relatable is that he gets beaten up a lot. He's not like a super cop where he's just like, you know, just kicking everybody's ass. It's just kind of he gets beaten up a lot. I mean, he gets bloodied, he gets hit a lot, and I think that kind of adds to, like, you know, you start kind of rooting for the guy when he starts getting beaten up. And you're like, just do it, win. We want to see you win.
Well, because everyone loves an underdog, right? And it's just nice to see your main character having to actually deal with pain, getting hurt, and seeing him rise up and take care of business. You know, it's just something you can root for. That's no mistake in there. And one of the biggest, I guess, tributes he'd done to those people, there was another movie he did called Project A, where he did a tribute to Harold Lloyd from the Safety Last scene, just to show you what an insane human being he is. He had his hands on a minute hand of a clock tower, and this is a real clock tower, like the real height of a clock tower, and he's just hanging from it, and he falls off
the minute hand, and he ends up hitting 3 awnings and severely damages his neck because on one of the takes he bounced off of one of the awnings instead of going through the canvas of it. He ended up bouncing off the edge and landing directly onto his head and just compresses his entire spine. And but the man is so insane that he did that stunt 3 times, like in the same day, to where his body just couldn't even take it anymore.
That's crazy, because like that's taking it to a whole nother level. Because like in Safety Last, Harold Lloyd, that's all forced perspective stunts. Like he wasn't actually like that really high off the ground when he did those stunts. But Jackie Chan's like, you know what? I'm gonna actually do it, and I'm actually gonna have like some kind of, because I did watch that. You sent me like a nice study guide.
In fact, just to show you how real it is, how real a lot of those scenes is, going back to the double decker. The scene where at the very end, Jackie Chan does get the bus to stop by getting a car to park in front of the bus. So that way it has to stop really suddenly. And then when the car does stop suddenly, the bad guys fly out. And the take is supposed to happen is that they're supposed to hit the car and land on the vehicle, but they miss the car entirely and just land headfirst onto the concrete of the street.
Yeah. I love that this movie has bloopers at the end, because there's a blooper of Jackie Chan standing between the car and the bus. And the bus, I guess, didn't hit the brakes on time for one of the takes. And he has to like dodge out of the way to not get like pinned between the car and the bus. It's like, holy crap, that's scary.
Yeah, it's very real danger that these people are putting themselves in. But going back to the movie, though, I mean, it's like I said, he's kind of like an everyman type of cop. And once he's able to stop these drug lords, the whole rest of the movie is them trying to get this one girl who was an accomplice to the drug lord to kind of testify against him. And we get a lot of really goofy scenes after that where he kind of acts like super cocky, like in front of this girl, like trying to impress her. But really, you kind of realize he's just like a big goof who's just doesn't like, he loves to brag a lot, but he cannot back up like any of the talk that he says.
Mm-hmm. I think that's maybe like one of my small gripes about this movie. I think Jackie Chan, it was a lot of mugging to the camera. I can't hate it too much because it's just the style of it, but it's definitely like him making a lot of faces. And I don't know if I'm a huge fan of that, but it did make me laugh. Like there's a really great goofy scene where he's like left alone at the police station and he's getting calls on 4 different phones and he has to juggle between the phones. I mean, this is a joke that's been done before, but he does it so well, like sliding around on his chair, accidentally saying the wrong words into the wrong phone. It has its good goofy moments.
Yeah. And just to give you another idea of how meticulous he is in that one scene, there's one scene where he like flicks a pencil with his foot that's on the table and he's supposed to catch it. And that scene alone took over 100 takes to do. And that's just to give you an idea of like, because one of his biggest gripes about American cinema is that the reason why they do a lot of those like cutaways, like, oh, well, we can't really show it, is just because of the time and effort it takes. I mean, he even says, like, I'm not like a Superman or anything like that, which kind of is. I mean, he's like one of the best trained martial arts, but he makes himself out to be this regular guy. But he's like, oh, yeah, anybody can do this. You just got to be able to have the time. I mean, you could do that too. But because he's one of China's biggest stars, the Chinese studios are pretty much just give him infinite time and money because they know it's going to be a hit.
Yeah, that must be nice, right? To have that kind of, not Hollywood, that just movie power where you get to make the project you want to make. Is he still very prolific? Does he make a lot of movies in China still?
He's still making movies. He's not as popular right now. It's his kind of popularity is kind of waning just due to a lot of his political views and especially what's going on in China. But I really don't want to get into that. I mean,
that makes sense.
But it's that's kind of why he's losing some of his popularity. He's had some really controversial opinions, but yeah, he is still making movies to this day. So but I will say the quality is very few and far between some of his newer movies.
Gotcha. That's sad because I really liked Police Story. I had a good time, and this usually is not a movie that I would pick up. I guess what I like the most about it is it never slowed down. It's always seemed like Jackie Chan was doing 100%, going 100%, and it was nonstop. And like, even when it would have comedy scenes, it was always dynamic. There was always movement. It always felt very flowy, and it was nice and well paced. You know, I think Jackie Chan had his police story idea, and it's perfectly captured here.
I mean, you can almost even kind of argue that this is kind of like a Die Hard before a Die Hard. I'm not saying that Die Hard took inspiration of it, but it's just kind of like, they kind of have like this really likable kind of guy, and then they make him, he's not really like a super cop, but by the end of it, he's able to overcome the odds of like this insurmountable force that's against him.
Yeah. No, you're right. And even like the setting towards the end reminds me of Die Hard. Now, Die Hard's not in like a shopping mall or anything, but it feels like a lot of people would be there. A lot of people exist there. And the shopping mall, that's where the finale of this takes place. A lot of glass, you know, John McClane steps on glass in Die Hard.
Yeah. Maybe we'll cover Die Hard for our Christmas episode. Because did you know that Die Hard is a Christmas movie, Nathan?
No way. No, shut up. No, it's not.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know everybody loves their traditional Christmas movies. Not me. I love Die Hard. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of the other stunts I wanted to go over. I mean, the mall scene, of course, is amazing. But before we get to that, I mean, there's one scene where he's on top of this 3-story building with this girl, and they're having to escape like the bad guy chasing him. And he takes this woman and just throws her into the swimming pool.
Yes.
And you could definitely fall in water and not die, but jumping from a great height into water still really hurts a lot.
Yeah.
That was the other thing too. Like the main female in this movie, not his girlfriend, but the main witness. She wanted to also do her own stunts for this movie. So when we do get into the mall scene, she gets beaten up pretty badly too, and that's her doing all of her own stunts.
I guess I didn't even connect the two that together. Wow, she was getting her ass beat. Yeah, I guess in the bloopers it shows her like Jackie Chan showing like, hey, look, if you do this, I'll just roll you over my shoulder. So that's cool. And I mean, this final fight scene in the mall is long, but good stuff. Really great stuff.
It's really the true main event of this movie. I mean, to me, this is worth the price of the movie. It's about a 10-minute long scene where they finally have cornered the main bad guy, and they have evidence that it's going to put him away for the rest of his life. And he sent like a whole group of thugs to get the evidence. So basically it's Jackie Chan and this one woman trying to beat up this entire like gang of guys.
It's just like what you would think is like a comically long fight scene where they are just throwing hits at each other, punching each other. They keep throwing each other into glass displays. But they're also running around the mall because the main bad guy, Jackie Chan has this main bad guy's data, and there's like a suitcase that's flying around that they have to chase after as well. So it's just a lot going on. It is a great scene. It obviously took them forever to do. Like, I don't know how anybody could do that.
Yeah. And one thing, so this, like you said, that this is mainly, there's a lot of glass in this movie, and even the cast and crew joked that this movie was called Glass because of the amount of glass that was used in this. And apparently I don't know too much about movie making, but there's 2 types of like breakaway type of glass. There's like a sugar type of glass that it's super fragile and it's really easy to break. But it doesn't look entirely realistic. So they used a lot of like second thickness. I think it's like tempered glass. So it was definitely thicker glass, thicker stunt glass than normal. So a lot of the times, like you'll see like cuts and bruises and like their people are bleeding. That's real a lot of times because they're falling and getting hit in the face. Because the glass, when stunt glass specifically, it's not razor sharp like actual piece of glass, but it's still a sharp pointy object hitting your face. It'll
hurt. Yeah,
like there's that one scene where one guy gets flipped backwards and he lands chest first onto glass. And even fake glass, I don't know how you could just walk away and be like, oh, because I figured that'd still have to hurt you a lot.
Yeah, it might not stab you, but it's still like pointy. It's gonna like I imagine these people came back bruised and probably bleeding as well in some way.
Yeah, and there was pretty much everybody gets hurt, and Jackie Chan had stated there's numerous injuries on set, but that's just kind of like the mentality of just once you get hurt, you get right back up and do it again.
We're making a movie here. Your body doesn't matter.
And well, I mean, it's true. I mean, he even said, like, back in the older days, like, if you were get hurt onto a set and you said, oh, I can't do it or whatever, you'd get fired. That's just
damn.
So that's the brutality of it. It's kind of like just suck it up, deal with it. And
yeah, you want to get this paycheck, don't you?
Yeah, but Jackie Chan got seriously injured twice on this movie in this very same scene. The first time he got injured, he got thrown off of a railing, and he fell 2 stories onto the tile floor on his hip, like full force, just on his hip, and he ended up fracturing his hip doing that. And I mean, there's really no, I mean, you can learn all types of things in stunt school, but there's only, no matter if you learn like the correct way to fall, it's still going to hurt a lot.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. That's why stunt people do it, because it's A, gonna hurt, and B, it can always end up going wrong. That's the thing. People still die, and it's not like commonplace, but people have died from stunts, and people do get really maimed from stunts sometimes. It still happens.
Yeah, it's definitely not 100% guarantee you're going to walk away with your life or even unharmed. And then the second time is at the very final stunt scene, which is probably the most spectacular stunt scene in the movie, where Jackie Chan kind of fire pole slides down this big display, but it's all connected to Christmas lights as he's going down. And as he's going down this pole, all the lights are like the cords are snapping and a bunch of like sparks are shooting out. And in that scene, the lights were supposed to be hooked up directly to a low voltage battery. Mm-hmm. But instead they were just plugged into a regular wall outlet. So he ended up getting like 2nd and 3rd degree burns all over his body and hands because he just getting electrocuted as he was going down.
I hope the person who did that was fired. Whoever was just like, I'm just going to plug it into the outlet.
What? Who knows? And then at the very end of the stunt, he falls off of the pole and crashes through another like little gazebo looking thing onto a table. He also ends up dislocating his pelvis and that fall too. But if you keep watching that scene, he gets up immediately because they don't do any cutaways. So he slides down the pole, he crashes into the awning, immediately gets up and then runs towards the bad guy. And that's where they cut at. But just imagine like the amount of pain this guy, and like his hands are on fire, his pelvis is in half.
After like they cut that scene, he was down. He was like, oh God, someone help me.
Yeah. So that's just kind of showing you what this man does for his movies. And it definitely shows. And the very final scene, which is really cool too, whereas he's kind of not the main antagonist, but one thing that's been in his way the whole time is that he's got this new police captain who's super by the book that they have to follow all the rules to a T. And then at the end, like this drug lord has caused so much trouble that Jackie Chan just like kicks his ass, like right in front of everybody. And one guy's like, oh, do we need to fill out that report? And like the main guy's like, I didn't see anything.
I didn't see anything. Yeah. Good stuff.
So it's really kind of it. I mean, if we're really kind of not really describing the plot too much, I mean, it's just because there's really not a whole lot to it. But it's like I said, you're here for the action scene, so I guarantee you'll be impressed when you watch this movie.
Yeah. Oh, it's just fun. I don't know. It's fun to watch these stunts. Like it's nice. Like we've talked about this many times this episode, but it's just really nice to see non-stunt like doubles, and just the whole movie is one big action scene almost. And it's a good time. And, you know, that's all I can ask for from a movie like this is just I get to have a good time.
Does this mean you're going to be checking out his other work?
Yeah, for sure. And I'd love to check out more of his work here on the show. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to do Police Story 2 some other time.
That'd be great. Maybe The Spy Next Door. That's a classic Chan film.
Yes, definitely that movie.
Okay,
we'll love it.
Good, yes.
But I mean, obviously, this is. If you couldn't tell by the amount of knowledge that I've tried to obtain from this movie, this is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I cannot speak highly enough about it. And it's one of the reasons why I love movies. I love watching stuff that impresses me, stuff that ordinary people can't do, and it just impresses me so much. And I feel like every time I'm impressed more and more each time because I learn more about what they did to make this type of movie. And then when I rewatch it again, I'm like, oh, that's how they did it. So I can't recommend enough. Please check it out. Please buy the Criterion so that way more of his movies will be made. Please.
Yeah, so they see the uptick. Oh, Jackie Chan. All right, we'll release some more of his movies.
Now that we've talked about Police Story, what are we going to be talking about next time, Nathan?
Something completely different. We're going to be talking about Willard. It's a movie about a boy and his rat from 1971. Yeah, are you excited?
I love... No, I don't like rats.
We'll get into that next episode.
But we will talk about that next time.
Yeah. If you want to watch along, Willard is on Tubi. It's a pretty easy watch if you want to watch along with it. Also, if you want to send us an email, how you feel about the show, or if there's any movies you'd love for us to cover, just go and email us at drive-in-double-feature-podcast@gmail.com.
We'd love to hear from you.
So, yeah. All right. Well, we'll see you next time. Have a good night.
See you next time.
憑傲氣，自我寫我一生的詩，情共愛，淚與痴，真誠是意。